The final SRX ratings from Stafford have officially been revealed. Texas Motor Speedway is planning on reducing the competing capacity for future Texas Motor Speedway races, and it looks like Darlington Spring Day will be returning on the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to the video. We have quite a few NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight to. We're going to start off with the paint schemes and sponsorship news. Let's go and just jump straight into that very quickly. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Josh Blicky's 2021 Palermo's Pizza scheme that we're going to see this next month at Road America. This paint scheme is really solid in my honest opinion. I think Josh Blicky's had some pretty solid paint schemes over one. This one is no exception. This is really cool. It's also great to see Palermo's Pizza is partnering up with Josh Blicky. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Road America. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ross Chastain's 2021 Circle B Georgia Watermelon scheme that we're going to see this weekend, I believe, at Nashville Super Speedway. Now, we've already seen a paint scheme similar to this, but it was very different. They ran it at Atlanta when he drove the 44 truck. Now he's back in the 45 truck this weekend once again, and he'll have this paint scheme on. It's really good in my opinion. Circle B's has some very solid paint schemes overall. This one I really do like a lot, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Tate Fogelman's 2020 Sim Seat scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. Like this paint scheme a lot. The colors work very well. I really like it a lot. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack in the Truck Series race at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Austin Hill's 2020 Ice Car scheme that we'll see in the Xfinity Series race at Nashville Super Speedway. I'm going to be honest and real with you on this one. I'm not a big fan of this paint scheme. Like I said, for the other truck, the truck that basically similar to this one that he runs in the Truck Series, not a big fan of this paint scheme at all. The colors don't work very well. I'm not a big fan. Hopefully, maybe we'll have a good run with this car, but I don't really like the colors on this car, in my honest opinion. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Cole Custer's 2020 Dixie Vodka Cocktail scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. I really like this paint scheme a lot. I love the colors on it. Did a really good job. The contrast on the colors of Dixie Vodka and the yellow in the car, they did a very good job on that, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack in the Cup Series race at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2021 Prior and Lee scheme that we are going to see this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. I like this paint scheme a lot as well. They did a good job on it. Inspired Motorsports had a lot of good paint schemes overall this year. This one is no exception. They did a really good job on this paint scheme. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack this weekend here at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Joey Gates' 2021 Be the Gift scheme that we're going to see this weekend in the Cup Series race at Nashville Super Speedway. Not really got much to say about this one, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how to feel about this one. I think this one's all right, to be honest with you. It's not my favorite paint scheme of the year, but it's neutral. I'm just kind of neutral on this paint scheme. Hopefully, he'll have a good run with Ricker Racing. I think Ricker Racing is going to have a good run, to be honest with you. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is William Byron's 2020 Rackley Roofing scheme that we're going to see this weekend in his Truck Series return at Nashville Super Speedway. This paint scheme's all right, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the color contrast it did on the car, though. This paint scheme's just all right. But it's also really cool to see that William Byron is going to be back in the Truck Series once again at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Jeremy Clements' 2021 AllSouthElectric.com scheme that we're going to see, I believe, this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. I really like this paint scheme a lot. I think Jeremy Clements' racing team has got a really good paint scheme. It's one of my favorites that he's run so far this year, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack in the Xfinity Series race at Nashville Super Speedway. And the final paint scheme we are going to take a look at is Austin Hill's 2021 JBL Audio scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. I really like this paint scheme a lot. This is definitely one of my favorite paint schemes that Austin Hill has ran in the Truck Series so far this year. JBL Audio partnering up with a lot of Toyota teams closer with past years. They partnered up with Cowboy Motorsports. I believe this is the first time that JBL Audio is sponsoring Austin Hill's truck. And I have to say, I think they did a very good job on this paint scheme. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack this weekend in the Xfinity Series Truck Series race, at Nashville Super Speedway. We're going to go ahead and jump onto all this other major stories in today's episode. Let's go and just jump straight into that very quickly. We're going to first talk about the Atlanta Xfinity Series race, as the start of the race is going to be pushed back from 3 p.m. Eastern to 3:30 p.m. Eastern for the Atlanta Xfinity Series. Now, I'm not really sure why they're pushing back. They really never told anybody why they're pushing back. I'm thinking maybe because of thunderstorms, perhaps. It could be affecting an area around that time. I wonder if they're trying to also get more of audience members, as it is later in the day. More people probably be home to watch the event. That's what I'm wondering. Maybe to have more fans at the event if they're going to push it back, and also maybe because it'll be a little bit cooler when the race does start compared to when they do originally were to start. It might be a little bit cool because remember Atlanta Motor Speedway during that time, it does get really hot in July. I'm just very intrigued to see why they're doing it. They never really gave an answer. I tried to ask somebody what the reason was for that. They really never gave a response to that. So I'm very interested to see if they eventually will give an explanation why they're pushing it back, but I'm very interested to see why they pushed that back. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Joey Gase. As Joey Gase is going to be driving the number 52 for Jimmy Means Racing at Pocono Raceway. Now, Joey Gase has basically been driven for Jimmy Means Racing back a couple years ago. I think around 2015, 2016, 2017. And I also think 2018 he drove for their team. Had some decent success, got some top 20s with the team, got some top 25s. They were somewhat of a competitive team when Joey Gase was in that car. Now, my question is, I'm wondering, is that why is Greg Gaulding not in the car? Because I was pretty sure they basically have said that Greg Gaulding was supposed to be in the car for pretty much the whole entire season, and now it looks like he's only going to be missing out one race at Pocono. I would assume that they're probably going to put Greg Gaulding back in the car at, I think it's Road America for the next week, if I'm not mistaken. I would assume that they'll probably put him back in the 52 car. I'm just wondering why they decided to put Joey Gase. I guess sponsorship is the reason, because Joey Gase does bring some sponsorship. I think that's a big reason why they're bringing him out to Pocono. What are my expectations for Joey Gase? I want to see that 52 team performing a lot better than they have. I think Greg Gaulding is a very solid driver. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he did really, really good with SS Greenlight Racing. But Jim Means Racing over the last couple of years has taken a lot of major sets backwards. I wonder if practice qualifying has a lot to do with that. I just want to see that team overall perform a lot better than they have, and hopefully in the future they're going to be able to show this. I really want to start seeing them improve as an organization going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Austin Hill. As Austin Hill is going to be racing in 6 races for the 2021 season, starting at Nashville. The other races that he'll be running in the Xfinity Series for HRE, for basically MBM 61 car, are Pocono, Indy Road Course, Michigan, the Charlotte Roval, and Texas later in the fall. I'm really happy to see this for Austin Hill. There was plans for him to run a part-time schedule this year in the 61 car. They just announced this past week that he's going to be running in that car for Nashville. Now, what are my expectations overall for Austin Hill? I think Austin Hill honestly will surprise a lot of people in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, especially if this car is able to make the field. I believe this car will have to make it in to the race on, because they're not really good on points right now. They'll have to make it into the show. I think that they will be able to do that. In my honest opinion, I think they'll be able to do that with Austin Hill. I think overall the goal for Austin Hill is to try to finish maybe in like the top 15, top 20, usually in that area. 1, help the points for that 61 car, make sure it gets into every single race. But 2, I want to see this car be able to make it to show at Austin Hill. I think Austin Hill is a very, very solid driver, and I think he can put a lot behind the wheel. I think a top 10 definitely be really, really good for him as well. But I'm really excited to see Austin back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think that if he does very well, there is a chance he could go full-time in 2022. A lot of people thought there was a good chance he'd be going full-time Xfinity this year in 2021. And I'm very intrigued to see if they're going to, at some point here, announce he's going to go full-time with HRE and just no more backing from MBM. I'm wondering if Tory Racing Enterprises is going to eventually go full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022 with Austin. I think Austin definitely deserves to run Xfinity. He ran really well. I think he got a top 10 at Kansas last year, if I'm not mistaken. Had a lot of speed in that race. I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen. But yeah, really good to see that Austin Hill is going to be racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for 6 races this year, and hopefully he'll do very, very well here later this year. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the SRX final TV ratings that have come out. We talked about the preliminary ratings where they had 1.33 million viewers. Now the final official ratings have come out from the SRX. According to Adam Stern, CBS finished with a 0.8 rating and 1.297 million viewers for Saturday night's SRX race at Stafford Speedway. IndyCar's second race at Detroit ended up beating with 1.3 million viewers, if I'm not mistaken, for the second race, even though that race got a little bit, only had like the last 30 laps basically show, because that race, a lot of that was for the French Open. You had that going on, so that got beat by the end of that, because I think more viewers will watch the IndyCar race, but a lot less watch it because of the fact you have the French Open going on at the time. NASCAR also beat it with the All-Star race, but this is now the 3rd most watched event of the entire weekend. But for a series that literally got no promotion, except on social media, people like you and me, and from the social media team at the SRX, the fact that almost 1.3 million people ended up watching the event for the first race is really, really good to see. And I'm wondering if this is going to continue going forward for the SRX, if they're going to continue to have really good ratings. I'm very intrigued to see how that's going to go on that front. But I think it's really good to see that the SRX ratings are somewhat pretty positive on that front, and hopefully they'll make some changes going forward. Things I'd like to see going forward. We'll talk about the format here in a second because they made some updates to the format, but I'm very interested to see what they're going to do going forward here very, very soon. But I think those SRX ratings are honestly pretty solid considering, they got no promotion. I think it's really good to see. I'm wondering if the ratings will go up over time or they'll go down, or if they'll maintain. If they maintain for the first year, I think that should be a win for the SRX because they got multiple years that they're going to be working with CBS if they signed a multi-year contract. I don't remember how long exactly they're supposed to be working with the SRX, but hopefully they'll be able to be around for a long time and continue to improve. But I think those ratings overall are very, very solid, in my honest opinion, for the SRX, and I think it's a success, at least for the first race. And they originally, for the preliminary ratings, had a 0.2 rating. The fact that they had a 0.8 rating is actually pretty good for that 18 to 49 demographic. That's honestly not too bad. Of course, you had a majority of people that were above that age of that demographic, but the fact that we almost got a 1.0 rating for the first event is very, very solid. I think that's really good news, in my honest opinion, on that. Speaking of which, we're now going to jump into the next story where we're going to talk about some updates to the SRX format going forward. Now, for the dirt race at Knoxville, there are some changes in regards. Remember at Stafford, they had 15-minute heats for both of those races, and they had 100 laps for the main feature. There are some changes coming to Knoxville this weekend. So, there's going to be a 12-minute heat 1, a 12-minute heat 2, and the feature, instead of being 100 laps like they originally had planned, the feature is only going to be 50 laps at Knoxville International Speedway. Drivers are going to be in the same color car, and larger numbers and driver names will be prevalent on the car. First of all, I'm not 100% a fan of them shortening the SRX race at Knoxville to 50 laps. I guess maybe to fix some of the damage, to not get as much damage on the car. That's one of the reasons I think there's a potential of why they're doing that. I don't like it they're reducing the length of that, considering the race is already really, really short. Because yes, 100 laps might take a little bit longer to get done at Knoxville, but 50 laps is a little bit short, in my honest opinion. I know that a lot of dirt races, they run 50 laps. So I guess that makes a little bit of sense why they're shortening the length of the race a little bit. I'm just a little bit disappointed, to be perfectly honest, that they're reducing the length of the main SRX race to 50 laps. I think the more people that can watch, and I think I'd rather watch a 100-lap race for that. I mean, yes, they're going to be having 150 laps to Slinger. We'll have to see what they do for Eldora. I wonder if they're going to be for Eldora. I'm wondering if they're going to be reducing the length. But the other changes with the larger number of driver names, I really like that they're doing that, and I really like that drivers are going to be in the same color car as well. Now, one thing I'd like to see going forward, and I've suggested this about the SRX, and I suggested this on social media as well. One thing I'd like to see going forward for the SRX, what I think I'd really like to see, is I like to see more of expansion on the field with diversification of the field. I like how diversified the field have with different racing series and different backgrounds. I like to see the field size extended from 12 to maybe 16 or 18 cars. I think 12 is a little too short in my honest opinion. I think 16, 18 would definitely be a perfect number. That's just one thing I definitely suggest. I also think the race should be a little bit longer for Knoxville, but other than that, I really like the other changes that they're doing for the SRX, and I'm definitely excited for the rest of the SRX season. I'm really looking forward to that coming up here this weekend. I'm definitely looking forward to that for sure. We'll keep an eye on that here really, really soon. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about the Darlington Spring Race. Now, there was a tweet that was released earlier today from Darlington's Twitter account, basically talking about renewing for the 2021 Throwback Weekend. Now, for the first time since around 2004, there were two Darlington races that well, last year, technically 2020, they had 3 races at Darlington due to COVID-19, but this is the first time that the Rebel 400 had taken place, and it was the Throwback Weekend, and in my opinion, it was extremely successful. It looks like it is going to be coming back once again in 2022. We have already seen a few schedule announcements come out for 2022. The Bristol Dirt Race is going to be returning next year. The Daytona 500 is going to be taking place on February 20th next year, and the Phoenix Championship Race is also going to be returning once again in the 2022 season. No other races have been announced at this time. This is the 4th race to be officially announced for the 2022 season. And I have to say, I'm really, really excited that the Darlington Spring Race is going to be returning once again in 2022. I thought the Darlington Throwback Weekend was extremely successful. The racing overall was really, really solid too. And a lot of people were not a big fan of Mark Truex Jr. dominating, but again, Mark Truex Jr. has had an incredibly dominant car. But I thought the racing overall was extremely exciting, was really, really good, really gritty racing. And it's also going to be with the next-gen car as well. So I think the next-gen car, we've seen how good it can be at points during the testing, especially you can get up to the wall as well. Also, composite bodies coming on the next-gen car too, which is really, really exciting to see. But I'm definitely really overall happy that is changing. I'm definitely looking forward to see that for sure. Really happy to see that the Darlington Spring Race is coming back next year. that I'm really intrigued to see, though, going forward about this is when are they officially going to release the 2022 NASCAR schedule for next year? Because we're still getting some teasers in regards to next year and what races are going to be returning. I'm wondering eventually when they're going to officially release the 2022 NASCAR schedule. I know there's been talk maybe later this summer or the end of the summer, early fall, they're going to release it like they did last year, because I think last year they released it, I think, at the end of September, around the October time. I would anticipate probably some point in August or July we may get the schedule, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll keep an eye on that for sure, but it's great to see that the Darlington Spring Race is going to be coming back next year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump onto the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Texas Motor Speedway. According to Adam Stern, Texas Motor Speedway is going to be further reducing their capacity around 75,000 per assistant GM Kenton Denon, I think, via taking alternate rows of seats and replacing them with food/drink rails. Now, in my opinion, I think this makes a lot of sense for Texas Motor Speedway to reduce their capacity. I think that they're making the right call overall on this front. There's quite a few reasons why I think this is the case. Most racetracks overall don't have more than 40 or 50,000 fans, the exception of being like Talladega and Daytona, maybe a couple other tracks. There really are not a lot of racetracks that have over 40 or 50,000 fans, and a lot of tracks have overall been reduced in their capacity around that 40 or 50,000 race. I mean, most stadiums, MLB stadiums, they have around 40 to 45,000, and they sell a lot more. Usually 40 to 45,000, even though Texas Motor Speedway does get about as many sometimes as like this other 500, it doesn't sell out because Texas has so many seats. So the fact that they are going to be removing seats overall is great to see. I think it's not a bad thing overall that they're reducing capacity. I mean, they're making some changes. They've been reducing capacity over the last year. I mean, back in 2004, they had 212,000 fans. They've gone basically back 2/3 on that. And it's because NASCAR is not as much appealing as it used to be, and people are going to Texas Motor Speedway because another reason, the racing overall sucks. And that's another thing I want to talk about as well. I think if one thing I would like to see Texas Motor Speedway do, instead of 100% focus on removing seats, I think the reason people are coming to your racetrack and why you're removing seats is because of the fact that the racing at Texas Motor Speedway has been absolutely off for the last 5 years. Ever since they reconfigured the track where Turn 1 and Turn 2 were lower banking, this track has really become a one-groove track. If you go up in the second groove most time, including when they decided to add PJ1 in 2019, it becomes like ice, and there have been so many wrecks and stuff that could absolutely been prevented, and you really can't race or really can't pass in those areas because it becomes a one-groove track. And when you have the PJ1 on the track, the outside line becomes the main racing. And racing at Texas Motor Speedway, including IndyCar series, which IndyCar has really suffered from, is IndyCar used to be extremely good at Texas Motor Speedway, and now the racing at IndyCar at Texas Motor Speedway overall has extremely sucked. Maybe if they would fix the racing at Texas Motor Speedway, they wouldn't overall have to do what they're doing and remove the capacity. But I wouldn't be surprised in the future, especially since they're going to be having a new president, GM, that's going to be taking over for Eddie Gossage, as Eddie Gossage is going to be retired, is actually officially retired after this past weekend's All-Stars. I like to see the racing here. The All-Stars wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. But you had to have a bunch of gimmicks in the race to be closer and stuff. And I know that they tried to basically, with the pack and stuff, they made the racing closer, but you can't really pass, like I said, it's a one-group track, and you can't really do anything. But it's just a little frustrating that, they can't see the bigger picture. I also think that's a good idea that they're adding food and drink rails to Texas Motor Speedway too, because there have been a couple people that have been pretty prominent figures too that have been overall had issues about the cooler situation that's been happening, which in my opinion, I know a lot of y'all are thinking, well, they have those rules online. They should not have they should be looking at the rules for going into a track. COVID has basically COVID is still a thing, but COVID is basically, in the United States, we've been in a much better situation when it comes to the situation around the country when it comes to COVID. And I do think overall, we should start letting coolers back into the track. I know why they've had the cooler ban this year because of COVID, but with things starting to get back to normal very, very quickly, I think next thing they need to start doing with the hospitality situation, they need to start basically letting coolers back into the tracks as well. I think that it's good that they're going to be fixing the food and drink stuff, but I think coolers should be allowed back into racetracks as well here at SMI tracks. I'm not sure what other tracks outside of SMI. I think Nashville's having the same situation as well, so let's see what happens, but I think that's another thing that needs to be happening here very, very soon. So, anyway, that is going to be today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification so you're notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Links description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Texas Motor Speedway reducing their capacity to 75,000? Do you think it's a good decision they're doing that or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about a Darlington Spring Day coming back in 2022? You excited about that or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.